It is told that she was born before the sun and moon. This is a truth that must be known, for it is the key to her long and profound tale. She beheld the light of the two trees of Valinor, Telperion the silver and Laurelin the gold, whose blended radiance lit the blessed realm in the elder days. She walked in the deathless land of Aman, upon the shores of Eldamar, and knew the city of the Noldor, Tirion upon Tuna, when its white walls were young. And then, in pride and rebellion, she forsook that light and departed.
From the ancient scrolls and the translations of the Red Book of Westmarch, this chronicle is drawn. It tells of her journey, the longest of any of the Eldar who lingered in Middle-earth at the close of the Third Age, a sojourn of more than 7,000 years, stretching from the twilight of the years of the trees to the final sailing from Mithlon, the Grey Havens. This is the history of her long exile.
Our account, therefore, begins not in the ages of men, but in the time before time itself was reckoned by the rising of the sun. In the years of the trees, the world was lit by no celestial orb, but only by the hallowed light of the two trees that grew upon the mound of Ezilahar before the gates of Valmar. And in this sacred light, in the bliss of the undying lands, Ardennes, whom we now call Galadriel, was born.
Contemplate this depiction of the ages, for it is a timescale scarcely to be comprehended by those who came after. The ages of the sun, wherein great kingdoms of men rose and fell, are but the closing chapters of a far, far greater history. Galadriel lived through an entire cosmic age, an age of myth and divine presence, before the first sunrise that mortal men would ever see. Her memory held the very shaping of the world.
She was a princess of the Eldar, born of the highest lineage. Her father was Finarfin, son of Finwë the High King of the Noldor. Her mother was Erwin of Alcalande, a princess of the Teleri, the Sea Elves. In this mingling of blood her spirit was forged. Her father name was Artanesh, noble woman, and her mother name was Nerwin, man-maiden, for she was tall and strong of will. But the name she bore through all her days was given her by Celeborn her beloved, who called her Galadriel, for her hair was a marvel, a radiant garland of gold touched with silver. Indeed, it is recorded that her hair captured the mingled light of the two trees themselves, a living memory of the bliss of Valinor. Feanor, the mightiest of the Noldor, whose skill was greatest of all the children of Ilúvatar, was said to have conceived of the Silmarils after gazing upon it. 3 times he begged her for a single tress, and 3 times she refused him. For with the foresight that was her gift, she perceived the fire of greed and darkness within his heart.
And herein lies the seed of her exile. It is written that even in the undying lands, a restlessness grew within her. This was the nature of the Noldor, to yearn for new knowledge and new lands to shape. Galadriel dreamed of the wide, untamed spaces of Middle-earth, and desired a realm of her own to command, a place to prove her will, free from any tutelage.
And so, when the great enemy, Morgoth, destroyed the two trees and stole the Silmarils, she seized her chance. Feanor, in his wrath, swore his terrible oath and summoned the Noldor to forsake Valinor. Galadriel was a leader among those who departed, but it must be remembered, she swore no oath. She did not seek the jewels. Her desire was for Middle-earth itself, and her ambition was the fire that drove her into the long night of exile.
As the host of the Noldor prepared to depart, a figure appeared on the northern cliffs. It was Mandos, the judge of the Valar. And he pronounced upon them the prophecy of the North, the doom of the Noldor. It foretold the grief, betrayal, and endless sorrow that would follow all who forsook the blessed realm. And this doom fell upon Galadriel, as upon all who pressed onward. The way of return was closed.
The journey into exile was born of horror. It began with the first shedding of elven blood by elven hand, the kinslaying at Alcalande, where Galadriel fought fiercely to defend her mother's people. It was followed by Feanor's great betrayal, burning the ships and abandoning his kin. Her father Finarfin turned back in grief, but Galadriel, unyielding, led her people on the long march north, across the deadly grinding ice of the Helcaraxë. She endured, arriving at last in Middle-earth at the very moment the Valar set the sun to rise for the first time.
In the new land of Beleriand, she came to the hidden kingdom of Doriath, ruled by King Thingol and his queen, Melian the Maya, a divine spirit from Valinor. Within the protective girdle of Melian, Galadriel learned much of Middle-earth and gained great wisdom. It was here also that she met Celeborn,
a prince of the Sindar. And though he had never seen the light of the trees, and she was an exile from that light, their love grew, and their union would endure through all the long ages to come.
The First Age ended in the War of Wrath, where Morgoth was vanquished. But in the Cataclysm, Beleriand itself was drowned beneath the sea. Galadriel and Celeborn survived, passing eastward over the Blue Mountains. Yet evil was not wholly defeated, for Morgoth's greatest lieutenant, Sauron, endured. And after a time of hiding, a new, more subtle shadow began to stir in the world.
Sauron came to the Noldorin smiths of Eregion, the land men later called Hullen. He came not in terror, but in a fair form, calling himself Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. He offered them knowledge, secrets to halt the fading of time. The elven smiths, led by Celebrimbor, welcomed him. But Galadriel's insight, which had once perceived the darkness in Feanor, now pierced the fair veil of Anatar. She counseled Celebrimbor to mistrust him, but her words were not heeded.
Under Sauron's secret tutelage, the smiths of Eregion forged the Rings of Power. Their desire was not for evil, but to achieve a noble and tragic end, to have the undying bliss of Valinor, yet remain in Middle-earth, the land they had come to love. Celebrimbor was thus deceived, and through his craft, Sauron laid his great trap for the free peoples of the world.
Yet 3 rings were forged by Celebrimbor alone, and Sauron's hand never touched them. When Sauron at last forged the one ring in Orduin, Celebrimbor perceived his betrayal. Before Eregion was sacked and he himself slain, he sent the 3 to safety. To Galadriel was entrusted Nenya, the Ring of Water. Its power was not of war, but of preservation and protection, and she would wield its secret power for millennia.
After ages of wandering, after the fall of Eregion in the last alliance, Galadriel at last found the realm she had dreamed of. In the forest of Lothlorien, she would at last become its ruler. Yet she would use the power of Nenya not to conquer, but to preserve, to create a timeless sanctuary, the Golden Wood, a last bastion of Eldarin grace against the encroaching shadows of the world. Yet it is written that her dream of ruling was fulfilled late and in sorrow. She and Celeborn only took up the lordship of Lorien after its last king, Amroth, was lost at sea. Her rule, so long desired, came in a diminished age. Her great task was not expansion, but holding fast, a long and weary vigil against the growing shadow from Sauron's fortress of Dol Guldur, which lay just across the great river Anduin.
She did not remain idle. She was a chief mover in the formation of the White Council, the Assembly of the Wise, and once more her foresight proved true. She advocated that Mithrandir, Gandalf, should lead them, but she was overruled in favor of Saruman. She perceived the corruption growing in Saruman's heart, but yet again her counsel was set aside, and the council's delay allowed the enemy to regain his strength.
And so we come to the end of the Third Age, the coming of the Fellowship to Lothlorien, bearing the very instrument of Sauron's power, brought with it the ultimate test of her spirit. It was a test 7,000 years in the making, the final reckoning for the pride that first drove her from the light of Valinor. When the ring-bearer, Frodo Baggins, offered her the One Ring, she was faced with the ultimate temptation. She saw it as the means to achieve all her oldest ambitions. She envisioned herself a queen, wielding the ring's power to remake Middle-earth in her own image, a world beautiful, unchanging, and terrible.
This was the terrifying climax of her vision, the fulfillment of her ancient desire for dominion, now amplified by the malice of the ring. She would not be a dark queen like Sauron, but a queen of light. And in that light, all would be enslaved to her will, their freedom sacrificed for a perfect ordered beauty. All would love her, and in that love, despair.
And then she let the vision pass. In this singular moment of refusal, she mastered herself. She broke the very pride that had driven her into exile 7 millennia before. She chose to accept fating, to let Lothlorien wither, rather than seize a power that would corrupt her utterly. In passing this test, the doom of Mandos was undone for her. The ban was lifted. She was free at last to go home. Her epic sojourn is thus revealed as a grand transformation. The pride that led her from Valinor was at last mastered and replaced by humility. The ambition for dominion gave way to the deep wisdom of letting go. The self-willed exile was redeemed, becoming an earned homecoming, and her desire for power was conquered by a sacrifice that ensured the freedom of Middle-earth. After the One Ring was unmade, Galadriel wielded her own power openly one last time.
She led the host of Lorien across the Anduin, and with her strength she threw down the walls of Dol Guldur, cleansing the forest of its ancient evil. But with the one gone, the power of her own ring, Nenya, began to fail. The magic that preserved the golden wood unraveled. Her long task was over. Her time in Middle-earth was at the end.
2 years later, she came to the Grey Havens. With Elrond, Gandalf, and the ring-bearers, she boarded the White Ship. It sailed out into the high sea and passed on into the west. The long exile was over. The maiden who was born in the light of the trees, who forsook that light, endured ages of sorrow, and passed the final test of her spirit, returned to the light at last. She remained Galadriel.